and welcome to another smoking room. My name is Tess, head of the head. No, I'm not. I'm not head. My name is Tess. I am captain of the When We Cry cavalry, and I'm here with my two equines.
Hello, I'm Horse Fry.
Hello, I'm Horsecam. I'm the second knight, the one that always gets killed first.
You're the horse and the knight. Damn.
With a centaur cavalry.
He rides and gets rides.
I'm only 50% horse. I'm 50% Fry as well. It's a shame Leela was the one who became a centaur in that Futurama episode. Otherwise, we could show a picture of that.
Not the American cartoon war again.
Hey, Futurama is good.
We can't get into this with Horsecam here. We'll just drift
The first four
into-
seasons are the best.
Yeah.
Comedy Central
true.
seasons are not that great. And then there's the new seasons.
Yeah.
Speaking of Futurama, we're talking about the future here. We are going to be having a Ciconia discussion. We're going to be discussing whether physical bodies are a good thing or not. We're going to be talking about the virtual world. Oh yeah, we're also going to be talking about Ciconia spoilers. So, you've been warned. If we do get into Umineko and Higurashi, which I don't think we will, let's try not to. That will be at the end. So yeah, we're just gonna pretend that we are, I don't know, I guess the three kings holding a discussion on whether we should implement a virtual world or not. And you will bear witness to the discussion and have no say in it. So just be happy with whatever outcome comes. Just be a good sheep. It is all in the name of guiding mankind down the right path.
Okay, is it okay that we spoil Sword
What's up?
Art Online or Dot Hack? What about Sword Art Online and Dot Hack?
Yeah.
Those
Well,
are
I've heard of
virtual
them, but I've
worlds.
never
I've
watched
heard of
either
the
of them. But we
Very
can spoil
much.
them if you want. I don't care.
Oh, okay.
I speak for the listeners, and they say it's okay.
I mean, I don't know how much to offer to this conversation.
Okay. Alright, so before we get into the Ciconia discussion, there have been some recent Ciconia developments not in the virtual world, in the real world. Who would have guessed? Ciconia is no longer being ignored by Ryukishi. The man himself was at a con recently, I don't
Yeah.
recall the name, but Worf was there, so he can testify that the man does exist. Allegedly, Ryukishi is a very cute old man, I believe it, and apparently he gauged interest.
What do you mean allegedly?
He's allegedly a cute old man.
There's
In reality, it's a suit.
There is documentary evidence of Ryukishi being a cute old man. He's adorable.
It's a flesh suit operated by a big giant mouse.
Recently, he tried to, get our hopes down, which in a way is good, because he said he was more interested in starting a new When They Cry than in continuing Ciconia. We've been over this many times, and then recently, on this con, he gauged interest between this new hypothetical When They Cry work or a continuation of Ciconia, and guess what won? Ciconia won by a landslide, according to reports. So it's back on the table, possibly, hopefully. It would have been very cruel for him to make us hope again and
Hopefully.
then just not do it.
Well, it's not going to come out for 4 more years.
Well, you don't know.
He's going to release on the 10-year anniversary of Ciconia Phase 1.
It's been cooking since COVID. I
Yeah,
think he can release it anytime now.
I mean, we're about, I think, 2 months away from, the 5-year anniversary of Phase 1. If you could think about that.
Well, he did this something for the Umineko anniversary.
Yeah, you really... Oh, no, because when did he release Ciconia Phase 1?
Wasn't it
Hold on.
on the Umineko Day as well?
Yeah, I think it was October 4th, 2019.
Let me see. Quick Google search. When did
I'm
Ciconia
looking at Steam.
come out? I wrote Ciconia and it gave me cicadas. You're almost there, but...
October 3rd, 2019. Okay.
Okay, yeah. So, one day before Umineko Day. So I think there's hope. I sure hope... Haha, not intended.
I really
I sure
hope
he doesn't
it's
let us down.
has a troll title for you, the impatient ones.
That would have been lovely. That would
It'd be really
lush.
funny.
I don't know what patience looks like if we have to wait 5 years, but
Do you think it's gonna happen?
Not this year, no. Unless
No?
he writes a story in like 2 months and has it released. No, there's no way that he's doing anything for the 5-year anniversary
Okay,
of
so you don't
Ciconia.
think he's been writing Ciconia for these past 5 years?
I mean, there's a chance he plotted it, but I don't think he's written out like the entirety of the entire dialogue for Phase 2.
He did release a teaser,
Yeah.
so like a hell of long ago. So
I mean, he's been working on Silent Hill F. He's still working on that. We don't know any
Is
information
he?
about that. He's probably also working with Key again. I don't know. I assume because he's done like three things with them.
Mm.
So,
oh yeah, Rusgan's Days is also getting an official English release.
yay!
A month after I finished reading it, thank you.
I mean, you'll probably have to wait a bit before it comes out, and hopefully it comes out all at once instead of what Manga Gamer has done with Higurashi, where they released it over 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my, I cannot believe Rusgan's Days is finally gonna be easily accessible by the masses. It's nice, it's good to know. I like Rusgan's Days. You should read it, but maybe wait.
Yeah, wait until either it releases. But if it releases with just season 1, don't just read the rest of it through.
It'll
Means
be painful.
that would be the worst thing that could
If
happen.
it's only season 1, it will be painful. Season 1 does not
Yo.
end where... I mean, no, it does. It's a very nice hook, but a very painful one.
Hmm.
Which is what a hook should be. So,
Horsecam, you were saying before we recorded that like Higurashi Chapter 1 came out in like 2015, and then the rest didn't come out
Yeah.
until like 2020
yep.
on Steam.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like, man, if it does that, just find it somewhere and read the rest of Rose Gun Days.
I don't think it will, because I don't. They haven't said anything about like. They haven't said anything about new art for it. Like they released, I think Manga Gamer put on their YouTube channel like the opening movie of Rose Guns Days, but it doesn't have any different art. I hope it's not new art, because that's one of the least favorite things about the Higurashi and Umineko Steam releases, is that they for some reason put new art on the episode
That nobody likes.
that no one uses.
Is the new art coming from Manga Gamer or is it coming from Steam? Because everywhere on the wiki and all, they call it Steam sprites, not Manga Gamer sprites.
I assume they came from Manga Gamer, because Manga Gamer is the publisher. That's what they're called on the wiki for Higurashi. I think Umineko, they're called the Pachinko sprites, which I don't know why they're called.
Because those are inspired by the Pachinko game.
I think because
That came
there was a
out.
Pachinko machine.
If they do anything to
Yeah.
Rose Guns Day sprites, I hope they like do away with the Ryukishi sprites, which are nice, but holy shit, the other set of sprites is just godly. So, if they do anything to it, I hope it's just standardizing what the sprite art style is.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Rikishi sprites post Umineko are pretty good. I think his sprites in Ciconia are genuinely really good. I imagine new sprites. Oh, I can't imagine Ciconia having a redo of sprites like the PS3 sprites. I think those sprites look pretty good on their own, and I like that art style.
It does give
Yeah.
it that 2000s charm, but without all the crusty PNG artifact stuff
Yeah.
and whatever is going on Higurashi sprite hairs and
Yeah, I think the evolution of original sprite art has gotten better with each Ryukishi novel he's done.
It's
Because Higurashi, I
for
don't think it's
paper
bad,
hands,
it's just like pretty rough.
Yeah, it's like the sprite art has
Yeah.
got to the point where it's marketable. Like that you can put Meow's face on the front of like Ciconia Phase 1 and like people will buy it.
Yeah, people won't
Yeah.
think it's like a cringe, like trash
Yeah.
game. Like if you put Beatrice's original sprite, I don't think people will take that seriously. Even though I love Beatrice's vanilla sprites, they're just not exactly easy sprites to look at.
Honestly, if you put Beato's troll face on the front of Umineko, I think that would also that would be marketable as well. But because that's such an iconic look.
I think Ciconia sprites are managed to like keep the appeal of like, yo, this is a story written by
Yeah.
one motherfucker on
Yeah.
his basement, probably, while also being presentable. So, it's amazing. I hope they don't change it. So, yeah. So we've been over this. Shall we get into the meat and potatoes? Have you finished your soup?
I I don't know where to like find this where I found or find where I read this, but someone over on another server was talking about that Ryukishi had said somewhere in an interview or something that he was like weighing up a couple of options for approaching Phase 2, and he like still hadn't decided. And one of them was
Yeah, that comes from...
one of them was like coming at it from the angle of like a rival team rather than Warcat, which does sound awesome, and we've talked about that. Like that could be a way that they do the almost the looping is the same event from a different perspective, and maybe it's still a loop, so it's slightly different.
I interpreted that a different way. I read that differently. So here's what he said exactly. So the question on the interview was, I feel like you knew this question was coming, but is there any update on Ciconia 2? And Ryukishi replies, without spoiling much, there are two potential approaches for Ciconia 2, portraying the opposite team's view from the first one or continuing the first story. Both methods are being considered. And I just read this as seeing the events of Phase 1, not from a different kete, but from Tojiro's POV or Gestra's. Because it says opposite team, so I just think of those big names, not specifically another kete. But it would be very fun if the 4 phases of Ciconia was just the same fucking thing from each of the factions.
I mean, maybe. We don't know what a lot of the other factions are doing, because, like, most of the Phase 1 is told in just kind of in Tokyo anyway. It's just Tokyo and Warcat. What is it, whatever his faction is?
What, you have ABN, ECR, Leto, AOU?
No, what's the faction we follow with Jaden and Meow and...
AOU? That's AOU?
Yeah.
AOU.
We mostly followed them.
It's really interesting, like the amount of information or the kinds of information that are available to like AOU, like POV, and it would be real interesting to do like if we just did the next one as like the ABN's perspective, and like covering how they respond to this virus, and like it's obviously a false flag attack, and like, you know, we had nothing to do with it, but now people are attacking us. Oh my god, you know, we've been framed. Like I guess Ciconia is quite like it's what do you call it? Like freedom of information is like pretty much impossible to stop. So like everyone can see news articles from other factions' perspectives, but there definitely still would be like a through line of like AOU bias in all the news and stuff. So it'd be really interesting to see the opposite perspectives.
I was gonna say, I hadn't considered this up until now, but if he is considering these two options, you gotta think, these are two very different options. It's not like choosing, oh, do I want a good ending or a bad ending? It's like, just, if he is considering doing just the rest of Ciconia just being the same story from different perspectives, that means that everything there is to know in Ciconia is somehow hidden in Phase 1. It's already in there, right? Because like you gotta think, in Umineko, you can tell all the story of Umineko just by doing EP1 from a different perspective, right?
I think that would have been that would have been possible. You probably would have learned. There's like a lot of like Umineko, like you go into Umineko EP1. I guess we're doing Umineko spoilers, by the way.
No. Let's try not to get into that like 20 minutes into
let's
the
try
episode.
not to. Okay, that's fair.
I mean, you could like, Higurashi does that similar, where like Higurashi, episode 5 is quite literally just the perspective of episode 2, but from Shion's perspective. Sure, there are some differences, but like it's mostly the same.
But imagine all 8 episodes of Higurashi was just Onikakushi. It's a little different.
You talk about Higurashi Go?
I don't know. I don't know. I think there's room. Like I would call Higurashi like kind of like a primitive prototype version of what he could do with Ciconia, because you know, during chapter 5, basically it is like the answer arcs, because Shion is the one who knows everything about that EP2. But like
Miyakashi is the most answer arc
Yeah.
of all the answer arcs. He did one answer arc and then said fuck it for the rest of the series.
No, because I think he found it really boring and like didn't really want to do the story he told because
Yeah.
like you can't explore new ideas.
Yeah.
Higurashi Sotsu.
But like for Ciconia, like you could, there's all these questions that we have, right? And there could be answers to each of those, but they're all dotted around all the like different factions. Like, and you think of like Higurashi's like message of like trust your friends, and like maybe the message of Ciconia is like secrecy of information. Like, I mean, it would be just one possible message, but like, you know, secrecy of information is like what allows situations like this to happen, because like maybe you go to like the ABN's perspective and everybody knows about the like the research they're doing on herbal L5, but they're like, we have to be secret about this because it's like for national security. And then like maybe it turns out it really was an accident, they let it out and everybody knows, maybe Stanislav knows it, but he's like, I'm not, like, you know, even though I trust these people, I'm not allowed to say anything about it, and I'm just not going to. I'm just going to pretend like, oh, it was probably an accident. Well, I guess it wasn't, but you know, it was probably an accident that involved somebody else and not the ABN. Like every question that we've got could be answered in another perspective, and they just don't, like, no one person has all the pieces and they can't put them together. Could be something like that.
I mean, it's probably more about like the purposeful hiding of like information,
Yeah.
like because like the end of the Ciconia is literally like they all fight each other and they don't really know the reason why. They just kind of go fight. They're all just hanging out and fighting each other to the death because like they're just fighting for their quote unquote country. I think it's like that like idea of like hiding information from one. Like hiding information to like propaganda of like purposely hiding information to influence somebody that one way or another, right?
So, which one would you prefer? Which option for the future of Ciconia? The same story, different perspectives, or just continuation?
Whatever just works best.
Yeah, I hope he does both. To be honest, I hope he like whichever one works best for a Ciconia 2, he does Ciconia 2. And then he maybe does like the other. He does like whichever one he didn't use for like Ciconias 3 and 4, or something like that. Like
that's assuming he still has that plan of doing 4 phases.
Yeah,
like who knows how like what his plan is now with Ciconia.
But he could very well do all of Ciconia as just different people's perspectives on the same events. Like it would be a really unique way to do like the loop style of his like writing, which is like it is the same events. They're all the same events, but the new perspective changes it. I'd be good with that.
I think it would be different than what like Higurashi and Umineko's loop things were, because like Higurashi was just like fragments and Umineko was this thing that spoilers that I can't really go into, but
Yeah.
I hope he does do that perspective thing though. I've been waiting for a story like that.
Yeah.
For a while, and I think Ryukishi could do it very well.
I think it works because I think there's a lot of different characters that work that are doing different things that our characters aren't always interacting with. So it's not like, oh, we're in this perspective of like that one faction who gets, what's a faction that doesn't get a lot of screen time in phase 1? Like
that doesn't get what?
A lot of screen time in phase 1.
Leto.
But also like probably like everyone except the AOU, especially like I think the ABN and the ACR. Actually, the ACR gets a little bit because there was that assassination.
Yeah, because there's like Rethibiel.
So like the ABN, I think is a bit like dark and secretive, and
I would love to see like Naima's group.
I mean, I guess like we do see a bit of everyone's perspective in this, so it would be interesting what he means by the opposite team's view. Maybe we'll have like an entire thing following Gestress and Tojiro and Via and the Three Kings.
Already on the second fucking episode.
I would be so down for. I would be so down for like. I would be so down for Three Kings slice of life. Like the Three Kings have to go buy bread. Like,
I mean, I would be down for it because like I feel like especially if Ciconia is supposed to be like a shorter story, I feel like moving into like the quote unquote villain's perspective with the second story would be really interesting to show maybe they aren't the villains. Maybe somebody else is the villain.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like as a community we've gone pretty far with speculation, and we feel like we've been with these questions long enough. But in like 10 years when all of Ciconia is out, you finish episode 1 and it will feel very rushed to already go into the deeper inner workings of the world on the second episode. Like, you won't have had time to think about the motives of all of these characters like we've had.
Yeah, Ciconia Phase 2 is always, I think, is just gonna be always weird with it because it's 5 years since Phase 1, where I think normally Ryukishi releases his like episodes like 6 months or so afterwards, so it's gonna feel really weird in terms of writing, especially he's just been putting off writing Phase 2 for a very long time.
Well, do we have anything else on this, or should we proceed?
Yeah, I think that's all I've got. I just really want Phase 2. I don't care what it is now. Although, I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
I do support Ryukishi. I support any writer to delay putting out the product to make, if they think it'll make it better. Like anytime a writer's like, no, I'm not quite happy with this, just take the time, make it what you want it to be, because you can only publish something once, unless you're like J.R.R. Tolkien, in which case you can just change the story later to be like, actually, I want to write another bigger story, so I'll just change Bilbo's whole perspective in The Hobbit.
Do what you want, Ryukishi, just don't touch Umineko again. And we're cool.
Yeah.
He's done that multiple times. He will do it again.
Yeah.
He will do it. He will.
He will literally change the ending of Umineko, much like he did with Higurashi. Just wait for Umineko Go.
No, we shall not utter those words. We will not imagine it into being. We will not. So, my dear two horses, one at my right, one at my left, would you like to keep your bodies forever and be chained to this earthly realm, or would you like to ascend and bask in a world of endless possibilities? Here's a practical example then. It is brought up in Ciconia that one of the pros of virtual bodies in a virtual world is no worse, allegedly. Some of the characters defend that if you're in a virtual world, you cannot physically harm somebody. So even if there are wars in the virtual world, no one will be hurt. That's kind of flawed, I think. I'll start the discussion, I guess. You won't be physically hurt. You can still be emotionally hurt, I imagine. So
no, because if there's something that can be lost, you will be hurt. Like, I mean, you have the example in like MMOs, like especially like games like, why can I not remember it? EVE Online, they still have wars against each other. You can't die in an MMO. You can lose product and resources, but like there's still wars that happened in there, like disagreements, and people are always going to have disagreement. It's not going to end wars. Sure, you might not die or get hurt, but people still lose the resources and still end up having kind of a class system, and like you might not be the happiest in a quote-unquote virtual world. Like, you're gonna have your resources taken away from you. People are gonna go in and take your stuff. Sure, you're not gonna die, but you could be quote-unquote not in a very great place.
That's true. Now that I'm thinking about it, at first, like at the beginning stages, it would be like an utopia, but then people would start, like, greed always wins. People would start forming classes, and then you would, because in Ciconia you can like imagine a world and just chill in there, but if classes start forming, I imagine, and people start, like, obviously some people will have a better understanding of the inner workings of the virtual world. They can take away the ability for free imagination from the people on the bottom, so that they are forced to live under their rule and, you know, have less resources, while the people on top have more resources, I guess. I feel like it would slowly evolve into the real thing, except no physical harm, but everything else still in there.
Harm in other ways is actually you'll have harm in other ways essentially.
This all for me depends on like what exactly the parameters of the virtual world are, because like when you talk about like keeping people alive against their will, like my mind starts to go to like brains in jars who have like no external stimulus whatsoever, except occasionally someone comes by with a keyboard and goes like, hey, how you doing this morning? And they're like, oh my god, human contact, please don't go. And they're like, all right, I gotta go on to the next person, bye. And then that person's like stuck in their own brain for like another like 23 hours. Like,
God, that sounds like
that's
hell.
horrible.
That is
so
horrible.
you know, like, and that's possible. That's a virtual world, right? Like that counts. And then on the other hand, maybe you have something like the Matrix, where somebody, like some authority in the Matrix, I guess it's the machines, like, but you know, like some authority is like, for some reason we have to keep people, like we have to control people for some reason. Like, I guess that would be like, that's probably more applicable if it was like a prison situation, like you, for some reason you were like trying to punish somebody or trying to keep somebody from leaving or something. But like, on the other hand, there's also like the possibility of a virtual world where you've figured out how coding works, like a way to translate between the human capacity for imagination and the code, like some kind of automatic way. Or you just have everybody just learns coding, like from day one, just like you learn to read and do maths. Everyone learns to code, and if everyone's doing it all the time, like there just wouldn't be like the old people who can't use technology. That just wouldn't be a thing. Like, because if that was how you like got in your car and went to work, was you had to code a car, and you know, like I don't think you'd use all these analogs for real world, like you wouldn't get in the car because you wouldn't need to, but you just code a space. If you were like sick of people, if people were like harassing you all the time, you'd just be like, fuck you, I'll just code my own space where you can't come in. Like,
it's kind of like dot hack, like I was talking about earlier. It's kind of like dot hack, where like the story element of like the initial premise of dot hack, at least the original games, like basically everyone gets trapped in an MMO. They're forced to continue playing this MMO, and like some players get the ability to kind of hack the source code, to go deep into the source code to give themselves either items or the ability to do things, to like quote unquote defeat spawn or defeat hacked, glitched enemies and like viruses, to give people viruses that essentially kills them, right?
That's interesting.
Because, like, if you can hack the code, you can technically just kill somebody, right? You could just either mess up their code, because if their code's not protected in any way, you could just go, well, why can't I just modify your code to, like, either to permanently disable you or kill you or delete you from the world?
I can imagine that at a first stage, if you wanted something, you would just code it for yourself. Coding, we're using coding, but reality is in Ciconia, nobody codes. You just think and it happens. But if you wanted something, you would just, wish it into existence and it would. But then if everyone can have everything, we would all just be the same. And I think that would start messing with people's sense of identity. And also, some people are just greedy. And if everyone has everything and they cannot have more than others, they want others to have less than them. And that's where we actually get into coding and like understanding the code of the world to actually change the world in a meaningful manner. But I said this kind of like not thinking about it, but I kind of like the loss of identity theme. I think that could be an interesting thing. I think that's down on Ryukishi's alley.
I think this all comes down to like what is the environment of the virtual world? Like, do you make it possible for someone to have power over somebody else, or can that person just go, okay, well, I'm just not going to play in your world? Like I read Snow Crash recently, and like Snow Crash came out in like 89 or something, or like in the 90s, and it describes like it's funny because they literally use the word the metaverse, but it's like it's kind of like one of those like Torment Nexus situations, but like the metaverse exists, but like he makes all these like interesting predictions, and some of them are like really accurate considering the state of like dial-up internet in the 90s, the 80s, or whenever he wrote it. Like some of them are clearly like, okay, you wrote it this way so that the story would be like visual visualizable for the audience, and then some of them feel like, okay, you just had no idea where this was going. But like I remember reading, he was talking about how like the metaverse in the story has limits on how tall or short people could be, because how ridiculous would it be if people could walk around being skyscrapers? And I just thought about like VR chat, where people are just like, yeah, you can be whatever size you want. Like they really
Maybe a cat.
like people show up and they're like tiny little like animals, and then people are like Big Bird from Sesame Street, and like it's
Yeah, like there are some models in VR chat where like you're just as tall as the world. Like it's just
that is
and, like I think VR chat is a better example of a virtual world that we might put ourselves in than something like a video game. I don't imagine there'd be any point in having a virtual world where there are such thing as a rare item, or XP, or you know. Or people have like combat stats or anything. Like there'd just really be no point. Like it'd be a lot of unless you were like in the virtual world and you were like, I need something to do, I'm going to code a game, and you can play the game optionally if you want, and if you get sick of it, you just leave. Like that's
like a AR game.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I can go put on my goggles and I can get an XP in my job.
Yeah, like.
That's what life is going to turn into. People are just going to, instead how you get promotions, instead you raise an XP bar and you get the XP back. Then you can get like.
Speaking of what you mentioned about what's the game called? VR chat. That was a very interesting thing to bring up, Horsefly, about how like people can be huge and then they just start obstructing your view and become annoying. That would surely happen in a virtual world without any kind of laws. So some form of laws would start happening, except if everyone is omnipotent, how can you enforce laws?
Yeah.
And so limits would start being a thing, and we would slowly, once again, move from a free virtual world to basically real world 2, except with no physical harm.
Maybe. But also maybe you could just have private rooms. Like if you want to enjoy the nice view, you can just like you make your own room where you can kick people out. I would say a lot of this depends on a fairly utopian view of what the virtual world would be. I could just as easily imagine a world where when people die, there is the option to pay $10,000 to a scummy company that's like, yeah, I'll keep grandma alive, and they just put their brain in a jar and talk to them 1 hour in every 24.
Yeah, that's like a concept of a lot of shows.
You know, like there's definitely, like, if it's a dystopia, the way I imagine it is a dystopia of neglect, where like there's just nothing to do, there's nothing to meaningful, there's no reason to nothing to engage with, no meaningful reason to keep living, but you can't die because you're a brain in a jar. Like that's the dystopia I can imagine. And if it was like a video game where there's rare items and some people have higher stats and therefore there's suffering and power disbalance and stuff, I would just imagine that as being like they fucking trusted Elon Musk to create the metaverse. You know, like it would be something like that. Like Elon Musk is just like, yeah, this is like I read it on Don't Create the Torment Nexus. Everyone should have like stats so that they can fight each other and the strongest wins. And, like, you just make a fucking terrible product that like, yeah.
Man, the abyssal boredom of a virtual world that you speak of just reminds me so much of that other thing we cannot talk about. But surely you know. I think so. Eventually in Ciconia we will definitely see the virtual world, and Rikishi will tap into the topic of boredom, and we will finally get to understand of things a little bit better from the side of that group of people.
What if the the three kings are brains in jars, and they're like, the only way we can end our suffering is by destroying the world?
Mm-hmm.
That is such an overplayed trope of the omnipotent god in boredom who plays with his funny little humans just because he wants some fun.
That does sound like something Ryukishi would do.
Yeah, it does sound like a certain thing we're not supposed to spoil in this episode. I did at some point want to bring up the real philosophical question that people keep like springing on me, which I have some thoughts on, which is, are we already in a simulation?
Oh my fucking, not this.
So Here's my problem.
Maybe,
Here's my
I
problem
don't
with the
know.
question, right? Like, because people are like, it's like a big gotcha. They're like, well, what if we're all in a simulation? There'd be no way we could know, And I'm like, okay, but like from a practical perspective, if there's no way we can know, does it matter? Like, if it makes no difference whatsoever, and it's like, okay, as soon as we can find a way to like make a meaningful distinction between, okay, this must be a simulation or this is just the way the universe works, stuff's weird. Why would we entertain the like, does it matter? Like, if we can't leave, if we can't change anything, I think
Yeah. It would only matter if, like, something important, like, if we could do anything about it.
I think if you're a quantum physicist, that's probably like the one time where you might like entertain the idea, because it's like, it is weird, some of the stuff that happens, and maybe you'd be like, hey, what if it's like trying to save computing power? Like what, like, and then
What?
maybe this. Yeah, well, like the quantum superposition thing, where like you can't know the position and the direction of motion or the momentum of a particle at the same time. So if you know its exact position, you don't know how fast it's going and where it's going to be next. But if you know,
So it's kind of like Breath of the Wild, where it just doesn't render the things behind the camera.
yeah.
So like the leaves of grass can be in any position until we point the camera in that direction.
Yeah. Like, I find that interesting. And there's like this kind of philosophical, like, there's a whole thing of like, I think it's called solipsism, where you go like, I have no actual proof that any of you exist. I only know that I exist because I live in my own brain. So as far as I know, the entire, like, everything outside of my field of view is not rendered. Like, it just doesn't exist. And it only exists to interact with me because I'm the only person that I know exists. The rest of you could be just like figments of my imagination, or like
That is so existential, dreadful.
it's kind of like a bit of a like philosophical wank, really, because it doesn't like help you do anything. It doesn't like lead anywhere. So
Yeah, it just leads to more egotistical, more thoughts of like, I'm the most important.
Yes,
yeah, it does.
on one hand, I'm the main character.
If everyone else doesn't exist until I'm around, I'm the main character. Therefore, it's my story.
Do you think in a virtual world they would eventually code pain back in?
I think it would be coded in very early. It would be like a day one patch, because like, the way. And again, I'm thinking of like a virtual world where like they try really hard to make it somewhere where like people can influence the world that they want to like work in, and like they can create their own private rooms with their own private laws of like the universe, which is like I think quite a utopian view. And like most likely what would happen instead is like you just find your brain uploaded to like Windows 95, and like you could open pinball and play some pinball if you wanted, and like that's like that would be the practical reality if we actually tried to do a metaverse.
Yeah, I imagine like opening a private room and like you just like you see like in the settings page like a huge text wall of like variables of like how the universe works, and like, oh, what's the gravity like? Oh, what's the pain threshold for this? And like, oh, how did this work? What's friction like? Kind of like that. If you're looking for like real analogs to like human, you're able to change the variables where like, oh, I don't want to experience pain in my private room, or I don't want to like have to deal with like anxiety, I guess, because like how does like mental health work in like the virtual world? Because like mental health is like kind of affected on your brain. If you think it's well not complicated, but like your brain is the main function of like why your mental health, and if you don't have a quote unquote like body or actual brain, because like how it depends on what a brain is. How do they calculate your brain?
Mental health's a really interesting, like if I go back to the Windows 95 situation where you just plug somebody's brain into a Windows 95 computer, like people's brains are intended to have fingers and toes and like things they can move, and like if you don't have those, if you get like cramped into a small space, you feel panic, you feel claustrophobic. That's like a built-in human reaction. Like if you were just a brain and a computer, would you just have that feeling the whole time because you had nothing to move? You couldn't turn your head or look at anything. You just instinctively knew what the screen that you were connected to looked like. You knew where the mouse was and you could move it somewhere. But that's like all in your brain, you know? Like it would be like sleep paralysis, where you were dreaming about a screen with pinball on it, you know?
Yeah, your brain is made for your body. Like, people who have lost limbs, they experience phantom pain when they don't have a limb, like, where they feel that limb is still there, even though it clearly isn't. They feel their fingers, individual fingers, on when they lose a hand. Like, and that's the worst thing for them. They hate... That's a feeling that sucks. Because it's like, it's not there, but your brain is trying to communicate with it. And, like, just imagine being stuck in a computer where you have a body, but it's not your body. It's not your normal body. Your brain doesn't know how to interact with that.
Yeah. I think a lot of, like, this kind of media misses these kinds of, like, really mundane ways that the metaverse uploading your brain to a computer are kind of horrifying. Like, for me, the most horrifying thing, actually, is that in order for a metaverse virtual world brain in a jar to exist, there have to be people or something happening in the real world. Like, you can't just leave the real world behind. There has to be a computer right here with someone's brain with electrodes attached to it. And there probably needs to be some amount, like there's probably like some kind of, like, I'm just imagining like a liquid that you're floating in or something. That liquid probably needs to be changed. There's probably like a pump that changes the liquid. And if that pump gets like jammed up with like a hair tie or something, I don't know why a hair tie would be in there, but you like
some goo or
yeah, like
just gets like
if the spring gets corroded, someone has to change that, or something has to change that. Like it'd be interesting. Like, do you think Ciconia's world, because it's got all this ATMS,
they would have to like figure out how to digitize a human brain, right?
Yeah.
Like, because the brain is like, it's electrical, but like you would have to figure out how to digitize that. That's the main thing you would have to figure out.
Yeah, but that still doesn't get away from the fact, like, there needs to be a real world operating the whole time. Like, do you think Ciconia's world is advanced enough that they could just have like oil rigs drilling the whole time and automatically finding new? I guess they're not using oil anymore; they're using spiridium. But they have spiridium rigs drilling the whole time, and when that spiridium field dries up, do they just automatically move to one? What if Leto and like the borders of like the AOU, COU, what if they still exist and the AOU runs out of spiridium and you need the spiridium to keep everybody alive? Do the oil rig bots move to a Leto field, and do the Leto like missiles automatically attack them? And like, you know, like there's a real world you can't leave behind, and like unless it's like fully automatable, then there's probably people that you leave behind. Yeah,
because like you can't, even if it's fully automatable, it still has a limited lifespan.
Yeah.
Like, say like for example, you just have servers keeping everybody alive. Those servers need power, and you have a way of getting that power, but like power is kind of a limited resource. Even if it's like solar, that sun is gonna explode at some point, right?
Yeah. So like I think virtual world becomes like a steady state situation where you realize we don't have enough energy and resources to keep a constant population that's growing alive. But if we stopped population growth now and only had brains instead of like a whole body, we had enough resources to just run the entire system on solar or something. You might reach that decision point where you're like, actually, you know, we can reach a steady state where humanity lives forever as just these computers, and you've just kind of solved every engineering problem known to man. So like you've solved springs breaking. Like they don't break anymore. You've solved fatigue of springs. You've solved like you know, how to keep a brain alive, like nutrition and stuff. You've found a way to just steady state take waste products from a brain and turn them into like food again by electrolysis or something. I don't know. Like it's kind of this utopian world that somehow both exists in a world where you've solved every kind of problem that keeps people from like just flourishing and expanding, but also you don't have enough to just maintain like endless like population growth, which would probably happen if every problem was solved. Then, you know, like there'd be no reason not to have as many kids as you want, and then, you know, you wouldn't outgrow yourself. But I imagine if we made a Dyson sphere, for example, like, you know, like that's one problem that we could like pretty much permanently solve. Like if we had a Dyson sphere, then that's like, you know, pretty much every energy problem solved.
I think they could do it. I wouldn't past it for this. I wouldn't put it past Ciconia's world to have infinite energy for the virtual world, because one, you do have operators, you do have the crystal blue girls. They don't seem to have a soul or a personality. They seem like robots. They could, you know, fix themselves, each other, I mean, and just keep the servers going. Regarding energy and spiritium, if the theory of spiritium coming from corpses is real, then, well, the materials to make a human body are everywhere in the planet. They just need to gather the right atoms, put a person together, and then vaporize it with the laser, and there you have it, spiritium. Like, you can make spiritium. We don't know the specifics of it, but we know it was made on Earth. So, theoretically, it is possible, so I wouldn't put it past Ciconia's world.
Yeah. I guess we don't know enough about spiritium, but I would assume that it has something to do with the human soul. So you'd have to like have like a living, flourishing person who's like got a personality and developed as a human being, and then vaporize them with the laser. But that's like that's reading between the lines of something called spiritium.
And also like that's like full on alchemists. Like you gotta figure out alchemy of a human soul.
Yeah.
Like how do you make a human soul? Well, it's probably something very resource intensive and very like, I guess I mean, ethics are probably not a part. Like, I'm gonna assume ethics and morality are not a part of this idea of like creating this virtual world idea. Because
I think we're past that point.
It's when they cry. Like, there's no way ethics are gonna be like. I mean, they will play a part, but it'll be to be like, don't do this.
Yeah. Well. Yeah, because it's like power. Because you could figure out an unethical way to have sustainable power for at least a decently long time. Of course, when we were talking about the real world stuff, like, I mean, it's still limited. Even if there's no way to have... There's technically no way to have it go on forever, because you could exist forever in a moment in that time, like thousands upon thousands, maybe millions of years, but again, eventually... there's either something's going to happen to the servers, like an outside thing is going to happen, like say it was done on Earth, like the sun is supposed to explode in like millions of years or something. That would just...
They can just put the servers on a ship and fly off.
Yeah, but that, like, there's still outside things. They could interact with somebody else. It's like when you put the servers on a cold spaceship somewhere, what happens if like the spaceship runs into an asteroid or runs into like
I don't know, put some blue crystal girls in there, try to maneuver around it, something. I'm not saying it's indestructible, but I'm saying they would, try to make it go on for as long as possible.
But there's always that bottleneck of like, well, what if this happens? Because what if, in an infinite amount of possibilities, a what if is set to happen, right?
Yeah, but that's also going to happen on the real world. Like, that's not the point of the virtual world. The point of the virtual world isn't to like make humanity go on forever. It's just to stop wars, I think.
Stop war. We already talked about how I don't think it will stop. Wars are a conflict.
Human nature.
I guess it's more. Wars are more of an essence of conflict, and conflict is always a thing in human nature. It's just the scale of the wars might change in virtual. They're might be as deadly, but more kind of, I guess, emotionally taxing. I don't really know what to say.
I do think it's like it'd be possible to end wars. I mean, like if you uploaded everyone's brains into like let's say we go with a game, right? But if you uploaded everyone's brains into like Tetris, like not multiplayer Tetris, just single player Tetris, and you can either like play Tetris or you can watch people play Tetris. Like, how would we have a war? Like, it depends on how the virtual world is programmed. Like,
I guess it is true.
You could have everyone be like all powerful within their own like space of their own kind of pocket of the virtual world. In which case, I don't think there could be like arguments, like if you count like Twitter arguments as a war, then I guess we'd still have wars. But like you could just block people, if you're all powerful. You just be like, don't give me notifications from this person. Boom. Like, I'm not saying that's perfect, because we can do that in real life, and Twitter still is a cesspit. But like, and then on the other hand, you could have a more dystopian situation where that they really didn't like, it was Elon Musk who was like making huge promises, and then in the end, all he did was like program a Windows 95 computer with pinball, and like that there can't be wars in that either. So I think virtual world ending wars is plausible. It's very plausible. The only way that there would be wars is if you programmed them in. Like in a virtual environment, the only things that can happen are things that you program in, or that you didn't think to stop from happening.
Yeah, you have no way of interact. Yeah, the only way to stop people from interacting directly, I guess.
Yeah.
So just fundamentally change what it means to be human. Nice.
Yes, it would be an awful existence just to be stuck watching Tetris or playing Tetris for eternity.
I have gone from a somewhat free person to a Tetris player for the rest of my life, which means eternity. Amazing.
Yeah, and there's no
all you do is just watch Tetris. There's no entertainment, it's just Tetris.
Yeah.
What do you mean there's no entertainment? Tetris is plenty of fun.
Well, I mean, if you watched... Okay, that's telling me, if you watched 100 hours of people playing Tetris, would you still be willing to just watch Tetris? Would you still like Tetris?
I think
or 1,000 hours, I guess.
I would gouge the 3D model of my eyes out.
Yeah. Just 1,000 hours straight, you wake up Tetris, you go to sleep Tetris. Even if sleep is possible in the Tetris world.
Jesus. Tetris hell. Everything about this is hellish.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's when they cry for you, right? Like.
Yeah.
Man.
Always the worst possible existence.
The most horrifying thing is, for a fact, our real world is inevitably walking towards this.
Yeah.
I mean,
maybe. I'm pretty. I don't know if this is like being a doomer, but I'm pretty sure we are like the last, like one of the last generations that's actually like gonna be alive as we know on Earth.
I'd rather not go into that. That's not something that I find fun to talk about.
I agree with you, Jess, but yeah. Let's keep the vibes up. Let's
get up for you.
Hellish, but not this. At least this is somewhat not realistic.
Yeah.
Or I at least suspend my disbelief, but I don't want to think of that.
No, but I agree with you, Jess. I tend to think of like the idea of virtual world, if we're not already in one, which is that whole other thing, but if like the idea of like we'll eventually get to one, I tend to think of like, well, there's actually limited resources on this planet, and some of the ones we're about to run out of very soon, and they will basically halt human development for all time, like as far as I'm concerned. Like, so yeah. Sorry, I said not to be a downer, and then I did it. Okay, so do we think there's a decent chance that if you did have all the resources to make a virtual world, that you would make something like The Matrix, where people die if they're killed, and it's real world physics, and with like all of the real world like laws and stuff. Like The Matrix, they kind of did it so that people wouldn't reject the program, which I guess makes sense. But like I really don't think. Like if you programmed the world exactly as it is, but you also gave people the ability to fly, I don't think people would reject the program. Like, unless they were like, and The Matrix, I guess they were forced into it. Like, you don't get a choice. So the idea is like, if you had a choice, maybe you'd say, actually, I'd rather live in the real world.
That is so Elon Musk. It's like, yo, everyone gets chips and a virtual world, and you can fly. And then you get into it, and you don't actually fly. You just kind of glide, and it doesn't work half the time.
But like you could have a world like the real world, but like nobody can die. Like you're like your body is like
population problems. Let's go. My
It's like
favorite.
if you ever played like Gran Turismo 4 or earlier on the PS2,
What?
like it's a racing game. But like the thing is, like in those early games, and I don't know if they've changed it later, but those cars, they're like bumper cars and they're like indestructible. So you can just crash into other cars and like you don't take any damage. You can crash headlong into a wall and you just reverse and then carry on driving. Like it's good fun because you spend the whole race like deliberately tipping your other drivers into a free spin so that you can get ahead, and like it's very dirty, but it was fun. But like you could imagine a real world that kind of lives on that. Like there's a lot of good physics in Gran Turismo 4, but also the cars are indestructible. So maybe we could live in a world like that where like there's a real world chainsaw and it does real world physics things to trees and whatever else you apply it to, but not to your own body. Like you can't chainsaw your own body; it just bounces off like it's made of rubber.
I think that would. I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind that would be influenced by the lack of physical consequences is radical sports and people who enjoy the idea of risk and feeling the feeling of adrenaline, like climbing or sky jumping. And
I feel
all
like
that.
you'd still have that feeling of adrenaline.
I think
like sometimes when I'm playing a game and like I look down from a high space, I feel a little bit of vertigo if I'm like really into the game. You know what I mean? Like even though I'm
I don't know, man. I would prefer to play 1,000 hours of Elden Ring than to sky jump, but you do you. I don't know. I think people would find a way to code pain and loss back in. Even if we don't want to go by the, nihilistic way of it's because people like to take things from others and human greed. Even if we don't go that way, people just sometimes want to have that risk, I guess.
I can see that.
Like I would never climb Everest, but there are people who do.
Like I could see us like if you made a virtual world where literally anything was possible and you could just anybody could automatically program things just by thinking about them. Like, I want a chair over there and there's a chair over there. Like I could see people like immediately starting to program, the video game of their dreams, and yeah, like, it's not a game if you don't stand to lose anything. So if you're able to create your own space where you could like, you could stab each other with swords, and maybe you'd code in optional pain. Maybe it wouldn't be optional, maybe it'd be like get good, and if you don't get good, you'll get hurt. But like it'd be presumably people's option to join that game,
This is sounding a lot like something.
Yeah. Maybe I'm giving people too much credit. Maybe it really would be like you'd upload your brain and it would turn out like Elon Musk has like also uploaded himself, but he's given himself like full administrator privileges and he can just zap your brain with electricity if you like say something mean about him on
Yeah, there would I think there would be people who would quote unquote be admins of the virtual world that would like control the whole world. Like would be like, "Oh, well, you're breaking the rules. We're just going to delete your code from existence."
They would, wouldn't they? They actually would.
It would I think in terms of the virtual world, there would be people who would be quote unquote admins, have the whoever created this server, I guess, would be like
they would be gods.
Would essentially have godlike powers. They would be like, "Well, you broke the rules. We're just gonna disable your code or just delete you from the existence, disconnect you from the server."
Yeah.
You get blacklisted.
We're gonna permanently give you an itchy hand. And you just cannot.
It would have like Minecraft creative mode and be like flying everywhere.
Never badmouth us again, or we will have your nails continuously growing and you'll have to quit them after 5 minutes. Dude, they would so do that. Like those small things that aren't, I don't know, hellish per se, but are so insanely inconvenient that at some point, I think maybe you'd like prefer death over it. Like imagine 100 years of having to whip your fingernails every 5 minutes. You just don't do anything else. That's your life, clipping your nails.
Yeah.
You would be such a pro at it, though.
Yeah, maybe Twitter really is the best like analogy for the virtual world. Like,
no, I do not want to endlessly live on Twitter.
There's no actual stakes, but if you say that you liked the new Star Wars movie, then you like suddenly you have like you lose the ability to see.
You get real life ratioed, virtual ratioed.
I guess the main takeaway from this video is let us go back to simpler times. I guess. Let us go back to being single-celled organisms on the primordial sea.
You know what we haven't talked about yet is the possibility that all of Ciconia is already in the virtual world.
I mean, there's a very good chance they have the ability to move their brains in and out of a virtual world.
I would go so far as to say it's like almost foreshadowed, because they've already talked about how the virtual world is kind of almost indistinguishable from the real world. Although, like, there are tells, which is, I think they say, like, they could jump into a pool in the public bath, or the Order of the Public Bath, like, server room, and their clothes don't get wet.
So if it is already a virtual world, what does it mean that some people seem to have more administrative power over others? I'm talking about B3 levels. Like, how come some people have more ability to do more things than others?
What if a bunch of the people, quote unquote people in this game, are like NPCs? And like Tojiro just figured that out, and like so he's like, oh shit, like I'm not that smart, but like now that I know this, I can just like game the system, find the exploits.
Yeah, because like there is a like I forget about that the factory stuff. That might be the real world. Like it's just people in a meat factory.
You know, that would bring us back to the theory that Ciconia is just a simulation, so that people in the real world can come to find out what it is that actually happened during the dark years, aka the years that have no history recorded. Because like they are trying to recreate the virtual world, but if they are already in a virtual world, the logic conclusion is that they are doing that so that they figure out how they came to the virtual world, so they can learn more about how the real world became the virtual world.
Yeah, and so they put NPCs in all the bits where they have like pretty good knowledge of what people did, and in all the bits where they're not sure, they put real people to see what they would have done in those circumstances. That's interesting. I guess it comes back to like what I was saying about like the real world philosophical question about whether we're in a virtual world, which is like, does it matter? Until it matters, I guess, like you know, like does it make a difference? Like if Ciconia is in the virtual world, what difference does that make? Well,
but you don't know if it makes a difference or not until you look into it. It's kind of like, oh, does it make a difference whether the Earth is spinning around the Sun or the Sun is spinning around the Earth? Like, you wouldn't think it did, but then if people started looking into it and see how far that got us. Like, for the average plebeian, that doesn't matter. All that matters is, do I have enough food to eat or not? But then look how far civilization has come from trying to understand which one spins around the other. And other such things.
I mean, we will always regress. Like those people who still think the Earth is flat.
Yeah. Oh, who knows?
Maybe the Earth is flat.
Maybe those people are NPCs.
Maybe we should just say that the Earth is flat, just so that like we can put that in the thumbnail and be like, we become flat Earthers.
No.
I mean, if the world is virtual, why can't the world be flat, right?
I'm trying to think of a way that the Earth could actually be flat. Like if the Earth is actually just a planification of a sphere, except we perceive it as a sphere because our perception of reality is warped. I'm reaching a lot, but I'm trying to find a way for Earth to actually be flat.
The thing that gets me about the Earth being flat is that it would mean that like there's a universal gravitational constant. Like there is such a thing as down. There's like no matter where you are in space, there's down, and it's in the same direction as it's always been. And like that kind of fucks me up when I think about like the implications of that. Like everything above you, it's falling towards you. You better hope that it's falling towards you slower than you're falling away from it. You know?
Wait, what?
Okay.
I didn't.
Okay, that's actually really funny to think about it. There's a plane above you and you're like, oh my god, it's falling on top of me.
I don't think I got the full extent of what you're trying to
so if the Earth
convey.
is a flat plane, right? then that means there's an edge. If you
Yes.
fall off the edge, you like just fall into space, right? So that means that no matter where you are in space, there's the same down, right? On Earth, down is towards a point in the center of the Earth. So like if you were off Earth, you might find down is suddenly towards the sun because you're closer to the sun's gravitational pull than you are to the Earth's. So that makes sense, and it's kind of like that's kind of how you think of the world if you're like sane.
Good world
Like
building.
if the Earth is a flat plane, then that means that the point that you're going to with gravity is also a flat plane, because gravity's the same everywhere on Earth, more or less. So like that means everywhere in space must be constant like that. So like the stars above you are being pulled down towards you, and like you just gotta hope that they don't like overtake you, I guess. Like
Oh my god, it's a race.
if we were all in the same gravitational field, then I guess nothing would ever move past us. Like there wouldn't be any relative motion.
We are in a gravitational field, though, aren't we? Because the galaxy is kind of like rotating, just like the solar system.
Yeah, but
isn't it?
You know, we're closer. Like
I may be wrong.
To the Earth than we are to the Moon, so we feel more of the Earth's gravitational field. If we were closer to the Moon, we'd be standing on the surface of the Moon.
Yes.
It's.
But everything is like.
But it'd be different. It'd be
I don't
different.
know.
Like if we went to the Moon, but the Earth was a flat plane, then like we'd fall off the Moon. Like you wouldn't be able to stand on the Moon. It would pull you back towards Earth because the gravity like would be uniform, right? Or I don't know.
What are we even talking about anymore?
Maybe regular gravity is still the thing. But then you'd feel some horizontal pull if the Earth was. Well, I don't know, would you? Because you'd feel a pull to like if you stood on the edge of the Earth, you'd feel a pull towards the center of the Earth, which is a disk. So it would pull you kind of diagonally down, which you'd feel almost a horizontal pull.
I cannot visualize what you're trying to say.
I don't know.
It's gravity physics. Don't worry about it.
Engineer talk.
Bad engineer.
So I think. Are we done?
So
I don't have anything.
that's everything I can think of.
Oh my god, a short episode during the fucking way.
I mean, short episode.
I mean,
It's still an hour and a quarter. Like that's
more Rise Guns Day.
that's still a decent episode.
I mean, it's shorter than like our Higurashi episodes, where like I remember one we did almost 2 hours of.
2 hours.
We
is
did
too
over
much.
2 hours.
It's
We did
just
like 2.5.
You run into a wall editing 2 hours.
Yeah, I think hour 15 to hour 30 is like the perfect length for a podcast. Editing and enjoyment wise, because then you're not like, oh my god, this feels like so long. But they're gonna stop talking.
Let us stop talking then. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Let us know if you have anything else to add. Give us your predictions with those right down there, your predictions for Ciconia Phase 2, so that you can come back to them when they get proven right and you can feel happy and, prideful about it.
Tell us if the Earth is flat.
In the meantime...
Tell us if Tell us if this is the virtual world and you have admin rights.
This is your wake-up call to know that the Earth is flat. We're all flat earthers here. This is the When We Cry Flat Earthers Society, okay? Anyways, we enjoyed this weird episode. It was a very weird one.
Me and my 2 horses.